The Spirit of the Forest, an original flash fiction by Will McCloughlin. In the dark of the woods there dwelt a spirit from the old times. It had long settled into its favourite spot, content to watch the squirrels play, the trees grow, and feel the rhythms of life from this mossy nook. The spirit didn't see the world through mortal eyes, whose perception grew to take in texture, shadow, and colour. The spirit saw through the eyes of the immortal, the eyes of the soul, of magic, and of the ethereal. The trees glowed and hummed in constant rhythm with the rest of the forest. Squirrels were fast zigzags of joy, hope, and anxiety, darting, moving, and sleeping. Deer were much the same, though bigger, and once a year grew fizzing, vibrating motes of fury. Great bears were lazy, slow, and loping until they set a deer to running. Sometimes the spirit would take a form, just for long enough to experience what it was to be a squirrel, to be a bear. Though the real ones would run from it, the spirit still enjoyed its play, enjoyed the sudden jolt of life in the mortal world, and the form it took influenced its thoughts while it remained in that shape. Bears were lazy, confident, and powerful. Deers were anxious and ready to bolt. Squirrels were best of all, full of joy and speed in equal measure. But now the spirit watched a group of things it didn't know. Strange, shapeless souls, each a thing without a place in the rhythm of the plants or of the forest, a new thing entirely. One of them paused beside a tree which pulsed to the rhythm of light rain, a pretty staccato feeling that the spirit enjoyed, that it knew as the prelude to growth. Suddenly the tree flashed angrily and deeply, and again, over and over, agony. The spirit caught a note of something akin to when a woodpecker pecked too deeply, but it was worse, it was terrible. The thing beside the tree was glowing with effort, the pulsing of its soul shone brightly with each exertion. The spirit saw no movement beyond a shifting of its position, but it pulsed like a bear chasing a deer, a wolf digging a den. Over and over, with heavy effort, it pulsed, and finally the tree split. Horror overtook the spirit. The tree split and fell. Its glow faded from existence, gone from the world it saw, but for the shrill, slow vibrations remaining in its roots, now severed from any leaves. The strange thing finally moved again, and others moved over to it as well. What was this? What had happened? The rhythm of the entire forest had changed. The roots of all the trees knew something was wrong. Pulsing glows were flowing all around. The spirit could almost recognise them, questioning, seeking answers to the change. What had happened? The spirit took the form of a squirrel, just long enough to see into the other world, the dull one that overlapped the beauty of the spiritual. When it opened its new eyes, it saw the tree was laid on its side, surrounded by creatures hacking and slashing at it. It lay there dead, and they pecked at it with strange objects without souls. The spirit tried to understand. There was a rhythm to their movements, but it was a rhythm of their own, wholly separate from the forest, separate from spirit even, cruel and efficient. Two moved in unison, chopping at the dying tree, strange glinting things in hand, part dead wood, part something akin to rock but crueler. Another stood rubbing it with another glinting thing, taking branches from its body, throwing them aside. The spirit's newly formed heart was pulsing too quickly, too full of fear, too full of anxiety. It couldn't think, it wanted to flee. A squirrel couldn't handle this, it decided. It needed to be a bear. It shifted back to the spirit world and floated its perception closer to the new creatures. There was something else wrong, deeply wrong. The spirit searched its realm, probing in directions it hadn't sought out in long ages, and found it reduced. How could that be? Had a river changed and flooded some of the forest? Dread flooded its soul. It shifted to the border of the change, to the edge of where it could still perceive, and felt a vast gulf, an emptiness that should not have been, a break in its reality. It took the form of a bear to study it more clearly. As its newly formed eyes opened, it felt weak and sick from grief, even as a bear. Stumps of trees stretched out as far in each direction as it could see. More of these two-legged monsters ran around. Some of them had misshapen wolves following at their heels. The spirit sat and stared at it. Shock overtook it. One of the things started making a noise, pointing at it, and began running away. The spirit watched it. It ran to a thing, a cave. It opened part of it up. The longer the spirit stared at it, the more sense the cave started to make in its slow bare mind. It was made of trees. That wasn't what trees did, though. The tree cave opened again, and more of the things poured out, carrying long sticks tipped with glinting, not stone. The spirit watched them approach with the confidence of a bear in its prime, and bared their teeth, standing tall to display their size and power. They still came on. Her new bear heart started to speed up. This was wrong. They were coming right at them. That made no sense. Nothing hunted bears. It wanted to charge them, wait until one gets close, then maul them. The bear instincts were growing strong. One of them ran away from the group, stood to the side and put a branch against another, pulled back its limb, and a moment later pain erupted on the spirit's side. They were hunting the bear, and could do so without getting close. The spirit shifted back from the mortal world and retreated to their deep wood. Something awful was happening. Monsters had come. Monsters to break the world and make an ugly new one without the rhythm of nature. They didn't fear bears. What were they? The spirit shifted to the form of a lynx. It stalked its way up a tree, hidden in the shadow, and observed them warily. Their fur was wrong and odd. Some of it grew around their muzzles and heads, but some of their fur was stolen. They were busy hacking and chopping the dead tree, but a new one came among them then. The spirit hadn't seen it approach. From the shape of it, it was female. Smaller, less fierce-looking, but the others paid attention, respected it enough to pause in their activity. It carried a hollow rock filled with water that they all drank from. Their calls were rhythmic. They began a song in unison. The lynx body wanted to flee, to go far away from these things and hide. The spirit forced it to lay still among the leaves, to watch in silence as only a cat could do. It watched them closely. It watched their movements, their broken, unnatural rhythms. Curiosity began to replace fear, and the spirit made up its mind. It shifted back to the spirit world. It would confront them. It would take the only form which it had seen they respected, and they would flee before it. It became a female version of these things, but stayed back in the woods. Mere moments after shifting into this form, though, the form's instincts flooded the spirit. Rage, vengeance, cruelty. It should destroy these things. The spirit should break them, drive them far, and fill them with such fear for what they had done. The spirit ran into the clearing, and the creature stared at her. They did not run, as other squirrels or wolves would when she came upon them in their forms, but they stared all the same, a look of unease on them. She opened her mouth, and where she expected to roar or hiss or screech, instead she spoke the first words that she had ever spoken. "Leave this place or die. I shall curse you. I shall break you. I shall flay the edges of your souls and leave you mewling in the dark of the night." They ran, and when they did, she heard them scream the word, "Witch!